Hello there everyone, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns and today I'm going to show you how to make this Rosebud Clusters Macrame bracelet. And this is the one that I made. So you can see we have these little rosebud clusters and these groups all the way along, and they're kind of separated out a little bit by these bicone beads that I added in just to add a bit of nice sparkle and a different colour as well to the piece. You can leave that bead out if you want to, that's personal preference. I quite like the way it adds a bit of sparkle and colour to it. Then I finished it off with these cord ends here, where I could then attach my clasp and extender chain to, so we can easily wear it as well and securely. So if you want to learn how to make this, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to need. First of all, here the cord that I'm using is this 0.4mm s-lon, so it's going to give quite a fine result. Now you can use other kinds of cord, just be aware that different kinds can give different results. And then I'm adding in these 4mm bicone beads for a bit extra embellishment. Now you don't have to use beads at all, you can also just use the cord if you prefer that look, or you can even mix up some different kinds and shapes of beads as well. That's completely up to you. And then finally I have my findings here, so I'm going to use these cord ends to finish off my piece and then attach my findings to them. So I'm lobster claw clasp and extender chain using the jump rings. So let's get all the materials ready and let's get started. And then as for the lengths of cord that we'll need is 18 lengths of about 1 meter and 25 centimeters each. And then I've made sure all the ends are even there, so I'll put them together. I've gone in about 10 centimeters from the end and just tied a knot, and then this is going to be our starting point. So now what I've done here is I've taken all my cords and attached them onto my project macrame board using these T-pins. So I just put them through the knot to keep it nice and fastened for now, and I'm going to keep using them throughout as well. It just really helps hold your work in place and it makes it much easier to work with. And what I'm then just going to do is start separating out my cords a bit, because we just want to start with some of them and then we're going to add in some more along the way. So how I've then separated my cords out is basically into groups of 6 for now. So what I have is I've taken the furthest 6 cords to the left and just put them out to the left side, get them out of the way. And then the 6 cords furthest to the right and put them towards the right. Again, just to get them out of the way for now, because I'm going to start with the 6 cords that are kind of mostly in the middle here. So I have those here, and then I've also kind of separated them out just to make it a little bit easier to differentiate between them. And then I need to start with the 2 cords in the very middle here. So that's just these 2 I've separated out. I'm going to take my right one over my left one. Then we need to make a double half hitch. So that means the one that's coming underneath, that's coming from the left there. I'm going to take around my finger, back around and through the loop of itself pretty much, and just pull the whole tail through. Just get the rest of it tangled up. And then you'll see that that cord kind of loops around what's in the holding cord, the one that's coming from the right and going towards the left, that's crossing over. And you get this reverse 6. I'm going to then tighten that all the way up underneath the knot, and then do another one, same way, to make it a double half hitch, and then tighten that. And then as I'm tightening it as well, I'm holding this holding cord kind of out towards the side at an angle, not straight out like this, but just a bit of an angle like this. And that's our first knot. So then I want to grab one of the other cords here from the left, so one of those 2 that I've got towards the left side, bring that underneath the holding cord, and then do the same, make a double half hitch, bring it around and back underneath, and then tighten that all the way up. So now we're basically building a row of knots right after each other. That's another double half hitch, and you can see that cord is now coming out in the same direction right next to the very first one that we used. And then we just want to take the last one, bring it underneath, and then repeat the same thing. Again, constantly making sure we're holding that holding cord in that same angle out towards the side. Just like that. So that's the one side. I'm just going to then put my holding cord a little bit out of the way for now. Bring the 2 or 3 rather working cords that I just used kind of back in towards the middle and over towards the side that they're coming from originally. Because I then need to basically repeat this, but on the other side, obviously going out towards the right. So that means I need to take the very first working cord that we used, so that's kind of the top one, and then bring that back towards the right side there. The other ones I'm just bringing back over just to get them out of the way so we don't get too tangled up. And then we need to make another row of knots here using the 2 cords on the right side. So just take one at a time, bring the first one underneath the holding cord, and that's the first working cord. And then again, when you tighten this, you want to hold this holding cord out at an angle. And actually what we need to end up with is about a 90-degree angle between the two rows there. So in that little corner that we end up getting. So that's the first one. Then I take the last cord that we haven't used yet, bring that underneath and make a double half hitch. And tighten that. And you can see with them building this row on this side, pretty much the same as the other side. And then again we have this holding cord going out to the right and just kind of keep it there for now. And then we have these 4 cords in the middle that are actually naturally wanting to cross over each other. And you can see we get that little corner now with that kind of 90-degree angle between the 2 rows. So then I need to go back to the 2 cords that I just used, the working cords that are coming from the right here and going over towards the left. And we need to pick out the one that's furthest in towards the corner. And just separate the other one out. And that one, like I said, is naturally wanting to cross over the other 2 coming from the other side. So that is now the holding cord for this next row. So the first one that's coming underneath, again, is the one that's furthest towards the corner from that right side. Just focus on those cords for now, and we need to make a double half hitch with that around this new holding cord. Again, just getting my cords tangled up. There we go, and then you tighten that, and that knot now is basically going to sit right in that corner. And we're now starting a new row right underneath the very first one, so get them as tight to each other as possible as well. The first one, then take the next working cord that's coming underneath and do another double half hitch. You can see we're building that row again. So just like that, and we now have 2 holding cords going out to this side right next to each other. And then we separate out the cord that's furthest in the corner from this left side again. So the very first one out of the 2 working cords that we just used, that is going naturally over the other one on the right side, which is coming underneath. And on here we only have 1 working cord, just like that. Make sure you do a double half hitch with that working cord. And you tighten that. Also, this row now is going to be right underneath the previous one on this side. Just like that. Again, we have the 2 holding cords on that side now. And we've now reached the very middle of the rosebud. So, the one that I just used is naturally wanting to come over the other one. So I'm going to leave it at that. And then basically, the other one is coming underneath, which means that's the working cord. So we just make a double half hitch with that. Tighten that, and that's going to be right there in the middle. Just a single knot. So just like that, and we now have the 3 cords naturally going to each their own side. Then to make the other half of the rosebud, we then need to kind of start from the middle and go outwards now. So I'm just going to start on my left side. So separate out the first 2 cords like this towards the middle. Then I need to bring the middle one of those 3 on this side here over the other one, and that means the one coming from the innermost part is actually the working cord, so we need to use that to make a double half hitch around the other one. And now obviously you can see we're holding this holding cord in kind of a different direction than when they were coming the other way. So you just want to tighten this while holding that holding cord in this direction here towards the right. And then what you're going to end up with is actually kind of getting a curve that's going to form around the middle knot there, just like that. Then we need to do the same on the other side. So just find the 2 cords first of all, 2 inner ones. Get the outer one just out of the way, and then we take that middle one of those 3 from this side over the other one. And that's the holding cord, while the other one is underneath, which is the working cord. Make a double half hitch with it. And again on this side it's going to be the same, creating that kind of curve around the middle knot. So these 2 holding cords have kind of now swapped direction and are now coming towards each other and wanting to naturally cross over. So I'm going to let them do that because we need to kind of close up this little gap now and make a point. Just like we have at the top, we need to make it at the bottom here. Just want to tighten that properly. So the one from the right is going over, and then the one from the left is coming under, so that means that is the working cord to make a knot with. And then we tighten that up, and basically cage in that middle knot completely. And then you get your little point there. So that's the middle part. We now still have the very outer ones left. So we going back to my left side here, take that very outer one that we didn't just use in the middle, and bring that over in towards the middle. And then we have these two cords coming underneath on that left side. Just get the other ones a bit out of the way. I take the first one and then make a double half hitch with that. So again, on this side here, we're just continuing this row, and we're going to make sure to follow the one we just made, so it's also going to create that curve by obviously holding this holding cord in the opposite direction. And then make a double half hitch with the next one as well. And you can see we're literally just following the shape that we've already made there in the middle, getting the rows as close to each other as possible. So there we go. Just then get these cords out of the way, because then I'm going to move to the other side and do the same. So grab the very outer one, bring it over the others, and then just take one at a time. Make sure you grab the next one that you run into, make a double half hitch, tighten that all the way up. So again, we start to get a curve on this side, coming back in towards the middle. The next one here, tighten that. And then once you've done that, let's get that one out of the way. We again have these two holding cords in the middle, naturally wanting to cross over, so I'm going to do the exact same thing as I did with the previous point. Just let that be naturally, and then use the one that's coming underneath as a working cord to make the next knot, and then just make this point and completely cage this rosebud in. And once you've done that, then you have the very first rosebud made. So now what we need to do is move on to make the next rosebud. So I'm just going to start on one side. I'm just starting on my left side, so that means I'm putting the three cords here on the right, that's going towards the right, just further out, just out of the way, so we don't get it all tangled up. And I'm going to be using these three going towards the left side from that first rosebud. And then we need to separate out another three cords from the six that we separated out initially. So I'm just going to get three of these free from the rest, and then still leave the other three kind of tucked away so we don't get tangled up. And then by doing that, we again have 6 cords here, just like we started out with 6 to make this rosebud. We now have 6 of these. 3 of them are just coming from that first rosebud. So it's literally the exact same technique. So just to start out with here, we obviously have these 3 first of all coming from that rosebud. That's the only thing that's different. So I'm just going to take the one that's furthest up or furthest towards the left from that rosebud, and then take one of the cords that we just separated out, one of the 3 new ones you could say, and bring that underneath, because that isn't going to be the first working cord. So I just make my double half hitch with that, and you can see when I tighten this is going to start a new row coming out straight from the side of that first rosebud. And again, you want to make sure when you tighten these that you hold the holding cord in the same angle as we did when we started the first one. So not straight out to the side, but also not straight down. And grab the next cord of the loose ones, make a double half hitch, tighten that right after the previous one. And you can slowly start to see a row building up here. And the last one. And then this is going to be the first row and the first side of this second rosebud. There we go. Then we can swap straight over to do the other side, the equivalent one on the other side here. So go back to the first working cord that you used, which is naturally crossing over the other cords that are coming out from that rosebud. They're coming underneath. So first of all, grab that first one that you run into and make a double half hitch with that. Tighten that, and then this row is going to be right next to the row on the side of the first rosebud. Like that, and the very last one comes underneath. And make your double half hitch. And there you go, now we've started out that next rosebud. And otherwise the rest is the exact same as the one that we made in the first place. So now that I made that second rosebud there, you can see it sits to the side but also a bit below that first one. So we obviously then need to do the same on the other side. But what I also like to do along the way is just add some more pins to hold my work in place. Like I said, to make it much easier to work with, and just kind of add them how you see fit. Then I'm going to go to the other side, so just get the ones I just used out of the way. So we have the 3 from the first rosebud on this side, and then of course we need to separate out the other 3 from the loose cords that we can then use as well. So separate them out from the rest, and then you just start this rosebud in the same way, but obviously we're just working on the side so it's kind of mirrored. So we take the first one coming from that rosebud, just separate that out, that's going now out to the right side. So that's going to be the first holding cord, and then we just take one of the other 3 loose ones we brought in, one at a time. Bring that underneath first of all, and then make a double half hitch with that. And then we start this row going out towards the right, again holding it at that angle. So we get the initial beginning of this third rosebud now. Take the next one, and you can see we're then building that first row. And then you literally just make this in the same way. You kind of obviously just start from the other side, but you just keep swapping from side to side, making the next row with the exact same technique as the other ones. So now that I made that third rosebud, then you can see here the only difference between this one and the other ones is that the middle row really is going in the opposite direction, but it doesn't make any difference at all. So what we have is now these 3 from either of those 2 bottom rosebuds there coming towards the middle and wanting to cross over each other. We're going to use these 6 cords to make the next rosebud in the exact same way as the other times, so just as the first one. So you would just go to the 2 middle ones, the middle one from either side or the inner one from either side, and then literally just start your rosebud in the same way. So cross the right one over the left one, and then start making your rosebud there, and that's also then going to connect these 2 bottom ones together on the bottom half of them. So that's making your next rosebud. And then we need to make ones on the side, and all you do with that is the exact same thing that I just showed you, because we have 3 on either side from those 2 rosebuds we just did, but we have 3 left that are loose. So obviously start on one side, bring the other 3 into it, make this rosebud in the exact same way as the one previously I showed you. On the other side here, make this one in the same way as the one on this side as well, by bringing in these 3 and making one there. So we're going to end up having 3 rosebuds on this next row. So now that I have those 3 rosebuds there, then we go on to make the next 2. So that's going to be the same as the second row. So that's the second and the third rosebud that we made. That means I'm just going to take out the 3 outer cords on either side. And again, just leave them out of the way, because we're going to then use the 6 that are kind of coming towards each other between the rosebuds. So these 6 here are going to form one between these 2. And then the other 6 on the other side are going to form one between those 2. That's going to be the next row, so that's the same as that one. And then we need to go down after we made them. We use the 6 right in the middle, so again you separate out the 3 outer ones on each side. You're going to be left with 6 in the middle, where you're going to make the last single rosebud. So it's going to be the same as that. So we're basically going to end up with a diamond shape. So now I made the full diamond here, you can see we end up with this little cluster of the rosebuds. And what we then need to do is get all these cords into position to basically start making the next one. So we're going to do one side at a time, and I'm just going to start on my left one. So what we'll do is take the very outer cord, basically on the outer rosebud there, and then bring that over all the other ones in towards the middle. And then we need to start bringing all the other cords in with each other as we're making knots. So I take the very next one that comes right underneath there, that's the first working cord. I'm just going to make a double half hitch with that one, and then tighten that. And what we want to do now is make sure when we have the holding cord here, that basically needs to lie in a row straight underneath the bottom edge of all of these rosebuds, because that's what we want this row to form. So that's a double half hitch. And then what we need to do now is this working cord that we just used, bring that in with the holding cord. So we now have 2 holding cords working as one. And then we'll grab the very next cord coming out underneath, use that as the next working cord, and make a double half hitch right after the previous knot, just around both of those holding cords. And there we go. And then we'll bring this one in as well. So basically every time now we've used a cord to make a knot, I'm bringing it in and it then becomes a holding cord. And then take the next one, which is coming from the next rosebud, make a double half hitch, like that. Again, bring that in, grab the very next cord as well. That is now the middle one from, you could say, that middle rosebud on the side here. Make a double half hitch with that. Now this is where it's just going to be a little bit different, but it's only if you want to add in the beads. If you don't want to add beads in, all you want to do is continue doing this, so bring that in as well. If you do want to add beads in, what you want to do now is leave that one out and then go straight on to the next one without bringing it in. So grab the next one underneath here and just do a double half hitch again around all these holding cords, and then you can see that is now also creating that row continuously. What we then have left are these 3 cords coming from the very last rosebud, so right from the point there. And actually we don't want to use them doing this, but what we actually need to do is change direction. So I grab all of these holding cords and then I bring them over to my other hand, back outwards away from my piece. And then I'm going to take the working cord that I just used as the last one, and we need to bring that straight underneath all of these holding cords. And then basically they've swapped places now. And I'm going to again use that to make a double half hitch. Just now with opposite hands really. And then when I tighten this, I'm holding these holding cords outwards instead. Again at a similar angle, or the same really, as this one is coming away from the piece. And tighten this, make it a double. Just like that. And now if you're adding in the beads like I am, this is the point where we want to add them on. So I'm going to take that cord that we separated out from the upper side that we didn't bring in with the holding cords, and then I want to just add my beads onto this, and then just push a bead all the way down here until it basically won't go any further. Now I'm just using this bicone, but you can really use whatever kind of bead that you want to, or even a combination of smaller ones. It's completely up to you, as long as you kind of bridge that gap of the cord so it reaches over. And when I then take this cord and bring it underneath all of the holding cords there, you can see it's going to fit and just sit in that little corner. That's why I kind of think a bicone works really well for it. But like I said, you can really use whatever you want to, and also a combination of beads instead. And then make a double half hitch with that, so it kind of captures the bead in place, and also we continue that row. And then what we need to do is create the rest of the row here in the same way as we did up here, but obviously just kind of in reverse because we're working outwards instead of inwards. So what we need to do, instead of bringing a working cord into the holding cords, we need to take a holding cord out of them and make it a working cord. So I just separate one out. I like to kind of go towards the back a bit and then bring that underneath towards the front, and then make my double half hitch with that, just around all the other holding cords. And you just continue the row like that, and make sure you're holding the holding cords in that same direction to achieve kind of this straight row. And there we go. Grab another one, make a double half hitch, working our way out towards the end of the row, building it up as you can see. And now we have 2 cords left, so I just use one of them as my working cord around the other one that's then the holding cord, now by itself again. And there we go. Now we've separated all the cords back out again, so all the ones on this side are now ready. So what we need to do now is just repeat the exact same thing on the other side so we can get those in the right position as well. And it's literally just using the same technique, but obviously just kind of mirrored because we're working on the opposite side. So now I have that on the other side as well. You can kind of see the effect that we get there. So it really emphasizes those kind of clusters or diamond shapes of the rosebuds. because then what we need to do now is start making the next one. Now technically we've already started it, because the last one, that very tip of the diamond in the first one, is actually the first one, the next one. So all you got to do is go straight into the row where we need to make 2, and you just use the cords that we've now gotten ready into position. So that means we need to use first of all the 3 coming from that rosebud, and then we need to use the next 3, the first 3 rather, coming from this side section here that we just made, the ones that are naturally want to cross over each other like that. So those 6 there we make the next rosebud with. Obviously it's the same on the other side, use those 3 as well from the rosebud, and then the first 3, the inner 3, to then make that one. So again we have the 6, and then that's the row with the 2, and then you just continue making the row with the 3, and you use the remaining outer 3 on either side there to bring in. So basically it's the exact same principle as when we made them up here, bringing them in. But obviously they're coming from a different place, but it's just because we're now making this little section in between the diamonds, you could say, or the clusters. So that's all you really got to do now. It's the exact same technique otherwise. So you just want to keep repeating this. So you have these little sections, the cluster, and then obviously we make these little rows in between, kind of edge you could call it, and adding in that bead if you want to. Then make the next cluster, and you just keep repeating this. So now that I continued repeating the pattern here and I've reached the length that I want it to be, then you can see down here is the opening where I've been working. We're still yet to finish that off, but also the other end. I've just detached it from my board, because what I then just want to do is undo this knot up here, because obviously we need these cords loose so we can also finish off this end in the same way. So I'm just going to undo the knot, and then I'm going to reattach it to my board so I can finish off the ends. So once I've done that, basically the aim with this is to get all the cords down towards the point. So what I'm going to do is just the exact same thing as I've done throughout when I've kind of done those little sections in between. So I'm going to start just on one side. You can just separate them in half if you need to, get the other ones out of the way. Just going to actually put a pin in to hold them out of the way. Oops. Just like that. And starting on this side, I'm just going to take the very outer one, bring that over the others, and then take the first one under that and do a double half hitch. And then you can see this is just starting that out in the exact same way as throughout the bracelet. Bring that in to the holding cord, and then just continue all the way down, and now you want to bring in all of them along the way, so don't skip any of them. So do this until you reach the point, and then also move to the other side, do the exact same thing on that side until you have both sides with all the cords down towards the point. So now get all the cords down to the point here on both sides. Then basically this is it, and all we can do now is obviously repeat on the other end and then use these cord ends to finish them off. Now these cord ends come in different sizes, so if you get ones where all the cord lengths there will fit into it, then that's fine, you can just use it as it is. Otherwise, if you need to get rid of some of the cords, you can always do that as you're making these rows here. So cut out a few to get rid of some of them. So once you made a knot, you take one of the ones that have the length of the holding cords, and then you can cut one off, and you can do that a couple times throughout, but make sure once they've been incorporated into the holding cord, so they've already been used, because then the knots you make around them is going to hold them fastened. So if you need to get rid of any of the cords, you can do that. Otherwise, do the other end like I said. Finish off the ends with these cord ends and a bit of glue. Then you can attach your findings, and then your bracelet will be done. So now finished off the ends here, then my bracelet is complete and it's ready to wear. So obviously just use your clasp, and then you can wear it nice and securely. And it's comfortable because it's all made of cord, and we just have these little rosebud clusters, but then also separated out by these bicones that I've added in that also add a nice sparkle to the piece and obviously breaks it up a little bit. So that's what it looks like. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Check out my other macrame tutorials as well if you want to on my channel. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.